There's something else to losing like $40,000 in a day or something. It's just very, even if you know you have an advantage and it's going to come back eventually.
Because there are days where, because counting is, like you said, it's same thing with like playing poker. Like you can be the best poker to play player at a table, and you could be making even all the statistically and mathematically justified moves, and you might still lose for a few days.
For sure.
You might have like a bad run, and you're supposed to be bankrolled, 5x, 10x, whatever your buy-in is to survive the volatility.
That's exactly it. But it's crazy how bad those losing streaks can be sometimes on a game with such a tiny margin, which I guess is why it makes maybe entertaining content in a way, because there's quite a lot of a roller coaster to it. But we had someone on our team, my teammate Syntax, who lost $40,000 once in a session, which is just not great in like a couple hours, and it's just those kind of things are awful.
How you guys determine if you're bankrolled with somebody else that they're not f***ing up?
Yeah. This is like the biggest thing about the two things, like how do you know they're playing well and how do you know they're not stealing from you?
Or that,
Those are the two really big things. And I'm trying to think about what I can say regarding the stealing thing. There's little things that I have in place that would make it less likely that would be happening, but saying those things would make them not work. But with the playing, we'll just test each other out regularly. So if we're doing a trip, we'll all meet up and then we will assess someone's game. And you can just objectively get where their game's at. If you deal a shoe to somebody and at the end you go, what's the count when there's a couple of cards left? They're either going to be right or they're going to be wrong.
Sure, but I'm thinking more insidiously, a guy shows up and at the day is like, I didn't make anything. And he says like, because I think they can reset the shoe whenever they want, right? They don't have to follow a set of rules. And let's say they say that, well, this dealer, he reshuffled so much that I could never get a good count, and then that was it. But they're just like stealing.
What do you mean by reset the shoe? Like they could just shuffle the shoe at any point? Or?
So generally in Blackjack, I'm explaining for the audience. I know you know this, right?
Yeah.
For Blackjack, they'll use anywhere from, 6 to how many decks?
Yeah, up to 8.
Up to 8 decks, okay. So generally, the better... you want them to deal ideally to the very last card.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
But generally they'll reshuffle, they'll reset the shoe after going through a couple decks for whatever, how many decks.
Yes.
Right. And I imagine that if you think you have a counter now, you just kick them out. But if for whatever reason you can reset the shoe, you can reshuffle after like 2 decks or 1 deck instead of going through more, which would make it harder to get like a favorable count, right?
So we call that penetration, and it's just like how many decks of cards they deal before shuffling. So they'll put the little plastic card in that shoe. And the further it is to the back, as you said, the better it is for us by like quite a big margin. Like that affects our risk, our hourly rate. It's one of the most important metrics that we're looking for. Searching like when researching the games around here, it's like the first thing I'm looking at is like, what's the pen on these various games?
Sure. Is that a set thing? I thought that the dealer had a lot of leeway.
Depends on the casino. Sometimes they have a notch.
So it sounds like they put in something. The dealer has, like you said, a plastic card that will cue them when they want to reshuffle.
When that plastic card comes out, that's when they shuffle.
Oh, and you're tracking that to be like, how many decks do they go through before? Because you want them to go through more decks.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So we want them to deal, as many as physically possible. Obviously, we don't want them to run out of cards because that would be a whole other problem. But yeah, we want them to deal as many as we can. So that's one of the things that we are scouting for. At different casinos, it varies, right? So the dealers may have been told, put a deck from the back or 2 decks from the back or whatever, but it will vary. So we might still check out different dealers and see where they're eyeballing it. Some casinos, they'll have like notched pen. So there'll be a little groove in the shoe. And then when they line up the cards, it goes in roughly pretty much the exact same place every time and things like that. But I forget what the heart of the question was. Oh yeah, does that like affect
Oh well,
things?
I was gonna say I guess I don't know if this is just my casino or if I'm making things up, but I feel like the dealers had a great deal of discretion.
Yeah.
Like if the players were doing well at a table and they don't think there's counters, and they're like, we're not gonna reshuffle, we're just gonna keep going or whatever. Yeah.
It would be wild for a dealer to take that kind of action themselves.
Okay.
It would be super wild. The dealer would have to know that they were counting and also dislike the counter. But a dealer doesn't care if you're counting the vast majority of the time. Some dealers will. They'll take it like personally, but they don't. They generally do not care.
Aren't they supposed to keep track of you? Like, don't they try to like engage you in conversation, and they're supposed to set them to pit boss or whatever if they feel like there's an advantage player? Or
I mean, at some casino, it varies a bit depending on the casino. Some casinos, yes. In general, the buck stops with surveillance to check who's counting.
Okay.
The pit boss could also have some kind of responsibility, or more likely, if they're suspicious, they might call surveillance and try and speed up the job a bit or draw their attention. Because surveillance are super busy. They're doing a hell of a lot more than just trying to catch card counters.
Yeah.
But for the dealer to tell the pit boss, occasionally it happens, but it's normally not policy. It's just the dealer doesn't like me for some reason.
Well, I feel like the dealer also wouldn't like advantage players because, like for people that play poker professionally, sometimes if they're there just to make money, My guess is, I don't know if it's true or not, you can tell me, people that count are probably really shitty tippers, no?
Yes. So
people who tip at casinos when you go to a casino, you're there to have fun. And you'll see this happen where somebody will come in day after day after day, they lose, and then one day they hit it big, and you've got your 95% theoretical payback. You hit it big, and they'll probably give a quarter of their winnings back to tips to servers, to wait staff, to the dealer. A guy will hit $1,000, be like, have a $50 tip. He'll throw it to the dealer or whatever. But like you said, the only thing that matters when you're counting or playing for slight edges is volume. And if you're tipping every time you win, you're eating into your profits like brutally there. So I imagine, you guys are really bad tippers.
The issue with tipping from a card counter's perspective is, let's say that I'm playing in like a high limit room where I'm betting, $100 minimum or whatever to make $300 an hour or whatever it's going to be. And then I win a lot. What's the tip going to be? Like, what are they going to expect the tip to be? It's probably going to be quite a significant chunk of my what we call expected value. So if I win 10 grand at that table, that doesn't mean I've won 10 grand in a card count perspective.
Lost.
That means that my AV, actual value, for this session was 10K, but my EV that I generated might have been $300. So I know that eventually that graph will come back down or level out. So I don't think of that as a 10K. Well, you kind of think of it as a 10K win, but really it's a law of long term, right? Mm-hmm. Long game.
If you're gambling and you lose $1,000 on 6 days, and then on the 7th day you win $7,000, right? You have this EV of like $1,000. I don't know if I said days right, but like $1,000 a week is about your expected winnings. So if you have a single payout that's $7,000, in the back of your mind you're like, okay, well I'm just hitting my variance.
But the dealer is going to perceive it as, this guy just won 10 grand or 7 grand, and he's tipping. What we'd have to tip for it to make sense for us versus what they would expect are going to be radically
different. Might
different.
even actually set you off even more. Some guy brings down $10,000 and you're like, I got like a $50 tip for you. That's about all I
have
do.
some stories from people from card counters that I know that have tipped, and it's just all had the tip rejected and things like that.
Tip rejected? Like they give like a 50 and the dealer's
insulting.
just like, how dare you?
Yeah, in Vegas and some of the high limit places, there's all sorts of things. So it's tricky. It's not like card counters don't tip, but it would be something they would carefully calculate within there. Mm-hmm. But especially, if you've got the dealers rotating, depending on the casino, let's say every 20 minutes, and then are you tipping every dealer or just once a session, or all this stuff becomes very complicated, and it really can just eat into your profits a lot.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's something I haven't really talked about because the nuances of that discussion ethically are pretty complicated, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if it will ever... I tip at times, and I don't other times.
When you're working?
Huh?
When you're working, you tip, or just when you're there for fun?
I don't go to a casino for fun.
Ever?
Okay, so you do tip when you're working? Okay.
No, not always. It depends. So we'll often have depending on the team project or the team, it will be in the manual, you can't tip or you can, or there'll be like a thing like that.
Okay.
So it depends. When I was playing, funny enough, when I was playing in UK, it was probably the time I was tipping the most often, despite being less of a culture thing. It's just a complicated thing. I'm not against tipping, and I don't love tipping culture as a thing, but given that that's how this country operates, like I tip.
And for casinos, in casinos, I imagine even in like the UK, tipping is probably a thing there too, right?
Yeah, but the tipping culture in the UK versus the US is just so different.
Well, I mean, just at casinos. Even in casinos, it's different?
I'd say so.
Okay.
Is there just less of an expectation then as well?
I'd say so in the UK casinos. Yeah, it depends on so in certain US casinos, when it's toke, when they get the tips that they make, there'll be a lot more pressure from the dealers to tip. They'll sometimes call you out on it for not tipping. I
will say in like the US, like the dealers, when they're excited when the players are winning, that's not fake. They're genuinely really excited because typically when people win big, they're also tipping big too. So it's a good payout for you as well. Although in most of the casinos I'm familiar with, I don't know, but it's normal. People that do table games, all of those guys also split too. Like only the poker dealers that I knew would keep their own.
It depends on the.
So dealers want to find you guys and get rid of you just because you guys aren't going to tip them.
They genuinely, in my experience, dealers
probably don't give a fuck.
They probably. I'd say the sentiment probably leans slightly positive on average, although do not get me wrong, some dealers will really hate card counters.
Is that because you guys are just kind of like essentially like sticking it to the man and they're like, yeah, you get the casino? Or like why would dealers have a positive feeling towards card counters?
I think they know that it doesn't dent the casino's bottom line in the scheme of things. And I think even the people that work at casinos, there is a bit of a stick it to the man thing, despite them working there.
Yeah.
I rarely meet dealers that feel a strong sense of what's the word I'm looking for?
Like
Not
loyalty?
loyalty. It's like not quite loyalty, but like an ethical loyalty to the casino. It's like they might really enjoy their job or they might not. And they might like their colleagues and stuff, but they still probably, as the casino institution, like MGM, they probably don't have a lot of strong positive feelings.
There is a
or
thing,
negative.
even when you work at casinos, I think you like sometimes your bosses, you like your coworkers, and there's generally you like customers because you're people facing so much. But like the faceless, nameless, Malconey or whatever, a guy that owns your phone, you don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I feel like I have to do so many insurance statements now regarding the tipping thing and everything. So let me just first the prepared statement I made about tipping. No, card counters sometimes tip, sometimes don't. They have a reputation for not tipping in general. If we do it, it's something that we have to pre-agree, or it's just out of our own pocket. Like we'd have to mark down what we tip to pay that into the bankroll. And I had some other really insightful thing to say, but it's gone from my brain.
I was gonna say, I wonder if maybe for a card counter, maybe you're happy if a card counter is there because it's better than a player like the table up.
That's what I was gonna say. The one thing that I think, well, this totally depends on the card counter. I don't know if I'm going to say a thing that just applies to me and people I know, or if it does across the board. But for example, some players will take out their frustrations of losing on the dealer, and they will literally blame the dealer. It's so insane. I will call that out every time it happens and have a go at the players that do that, or try and at least redirect to being, it's not them, it's the cards, or make some kind of comments, because they must hate when that happens.
For sure.
So in that way, I don't know. It's more about, are you an arsehole as a customer? I think it's mainly that. And if you're not, then they'll be happy you're there.
People feel like, especially at the poker tables, that the dealers are f***ing them personally.
It's
like, you
so
always
bad.
deal me this bullshit. Like,
It's
you
like
get out of here. Yeah.
These people play, especially poker players on a professional level, are playing a game where they have to understand math and odds and N0 and the long-term stuff and all this stuff to then be like, well, this dealer is personally having a, I'm like, how can you believe? It's actually crazy. I have to just talk about this because sometimes when I'm playing with random players at the table, the level in which they will blame the dealer is crazy. And I'll ask them, what do you think's just happened? And their answer that they were trying to avoid saying is, they magicked it. Like, not side hand, that magically the cards changed because of whatever decision. If I do a move that's incorrect in terms of what they perceive basic strategy to be, and then they lose their hand, they will blame me.
Like another player?
Yeah. Because
I was gonna say funnier than blaming the dealer are if you want to die but you don't want to kill yourself, go to a blackjack table and just start playing incorrect blackjack around people that take it way too seriously. Not seriously in a professional.
Incorrect blackjack?
So, like I said earlier, there are a set of mathematical moves that if you're playing perfect blackjack, everybody plays, and then there's also just like there's general strategy of how you should be.
I'd
be careful to say strategy, but there's you're expected to know that let's say you're showing I don't know what the proper moves, but let's say you're showing it would be like a soft 18. You've got like an ace and you've got like a 7 and you're hitting
You're picking
here.
such a complex hand for laymen to understand.
Sure, I'm sorry.
The most misplayed hand in all of blackjack.
F you. Let's say you're showing like
No, I want to know what you think you should do with the soft 18.
You're showing I have no idea. Okay?
I don't know what a soft 18 is.
Okay, sorry. Let's say you have 15 in front of you, okay? And the dealer is
15
showing...
points?
15. You got a face card and the number 5, okay? And let's say that the mathematically correct move here is you're supposed to stand or stay or whatever, right? Like, go to the next guy. You don't do it, right? And then let's say you're like, okay, well, it. I want to hit. And then let's say you get like a 4. And now you're at 19. You're like, oh, cool. Well, let's say that the guy next to you is showing something and then he does, like 1 or 2 hits and now he busts. That guy will look at the guy next to him and go, you f***ed it up because you called that card. I should have had that card. You f***ed me. And these people, now I don't know if it's worse for counters or blaming the dealers, but that's the most mad I've seen people get at a blackjack table is on other players that are playing incorrectly when they end up losing their hand, even though it has no impact mathematically on what you're doing technically.
It's because they think that there's a flow of the cards, that the shoe is magically in some kind of a rhythm.
The river of time.
It's just crazy. And whereas they think doing one wrong decision knocks it out of whack, or taking away a hand when you were playing 2 hands, you go to 1, they'll be like, whoa, all this stuff. It's just this gambler logic, and they get so mad sometimes. It's really funny because when
it's
you're
almost
counting,
superstitious.
It is. It's very superstitious. But when you're counting, we know basic strategy like the back of our hand, but we will deviate from that strategy when the count tells us to. Sometimes it will. What would normally be the dumb thing is the smart thing to do. A really good example is like splitting 10s. If you have 2 10s, you have a 20. You should not draw a card. You should not split them, which means you get 2 new cards on each because you already have a 20. But at a high count, with the dealer up card being the right thing, it's great to split those cards. But players lose their mind when you split a 20. It's great.
And so You know what? Never mind. When you split 2 tens, does that mean you basically get 2 hands now, or what does
Yeah,
that
they
mean?
deal a new card on each.
Okay, so now you have 2 hands of blackjack that you're playing.
It's a
at
great
one
thing
time.
to do, not with
Why would they get
tens.
mad? I don't understand.
Because you've affected the flow of the cards by doing something dumb. You must play sensibly. This is a team sport. We're a team.